And we have a very, very interesting film airing this evening on TTT, Visibly Me. What is that all about? The director, Nicola Cross, is joining us via Skype. Nicola, good morning.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
I am great. How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm excited to have a connection with Trinidad on the other side of the world. And yeah, it's really great and sounds busy and lots happening. Thank you very much for having
and
me.
you know, we love to have our films shown on national television. But tell me something, where are you joining us from?
I'm actually in London in the UK at the moment, yes.
So, how are things in London this morning?
Not as cold as it could be, and there's a bit of blue sky, so we're good.
Oh, you see? You see, as long as we're good, that is most important. So, Nicola, first of all, tell me a bit about yourself and the work that you've been doing.
Okay, so I make films that at the moment seem to be my evolution has taken me to the place where I make films mainly on women and girls. So it's really about trying to communicate the experience, their personal experience of the world. So
And
I just came back from Myanmar where I was doing some films on handicapped women and a woman who founded an organization for handicapped people, disabled people.
And from what I understand, you were born in Tanzania but raised here in Trinidad and Tobago?
Yes, so my father and my mother were there. My father was working in Tanzania, and so we came to Trinidad when I was 5. And yes, and then my parents split, so my mother lived in England and my father lived in Trinidad. So I've had a kind of a multicultural experience in lots of ways. Yeah.
So some real connections there. I know we're going to talk about Visibly Me, but before we do that, Nicola, let's give people a little taste of what they can expect.
I just came to that point. I knew that I had to become visible.
Visibly Me, directed by Nicola Cross. And just a correction, it will be airing tomorrow at 8 o'clock. So you have to be with TTT to see more on Visibly Me. Nicola Cross, tell me about the story.
Well, it's really about a 47-year-old single woman without children who finds herself invisible and decides she needs to find the antidote. So I did it as part of my filmmaking master's. So it was my dissertation. And I was in London and I wanted to do a story in Trinidad and I couldn't. And I was like, okay, so how do I do this in London when it's really a story about so much about Trinidad? And what's interesting about it, I think, is it's basically my experience as a woman. And becoming visible, I suppose, with all the different experiences that men and women have and not feeling seen. And what's interesting, I think, is the feedback that I get from it is that people seem to relate to it because of their own experience of invisibility. So at one point, a homosexual man said to me, "Oh my gosh, I really related to that." I'm like, "Well, you're not my target group, gosh." So that was really interesting, and how I guess so many people do feel invisible. I was just listening to the conversation on epilepsy, and that's sort of the ethical thing and how we think about other people and that we don't necessarily understand their experiences. And I suppose sometimes people feel invisible because they don't feel heard or seen. And so that's what I try to communicate experience with other people so that we have a better understanding of other people and perhaps we are a bit nicer to them.
Yeah, and for you, it was a personal experience as well, what you would have had to go through.
Yes, but I also think it's the way that I see the world. And so I try to imagine how other people see the world. So, and I'm just one out of very many women. So, for example, yesterday I read a story where apparently women in India, they lose their jobs because they get their periods. And so they're now actually having hysterectomies so that they don't lose their jobs. So it's kind of, yes, it's my experience, but this is my manifestation of living in society, but in other societies, other cultures, for other women, it manifests differently.
So what are the plans for this film?
Really, it feels it was made in 2016 and was in the Trinidad and Tobago Film Festival in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of feel like I've moved on from there in lots of ways. So I'd like people to see it, but I think ultimately I have started working with women in development. So
Mm-hmm.
last year I was making some films with a charity in Kenya, AMREF, looking at female genital mutilation and some other conditions that women have, and basically trying to communicate and hear other people's experience of the world, so perhaps we can improve people's lives, which is why it's actually quite good to work with organizations that are working in the field in terms of creating real change, and
Mm-hmm.
to use films alongside that to create visibility of other people's experiences, especially women.
And it sounds like a film that a lot of people will be interested in looking at. So thank you very much, Nicola Cross, for joining us via Skype from London to tell us about Visibly Me. And that film, part of our Live for Local campaign, will be aired tomorrow at 8 p.m. right here on TTT. Carrie, it sounds like one of those films where when you look at it, you might have to do some self-reflection as well.
Yeah, that's right. You know, I believe it's something that quite a number of people will be able to relate to, because there are people who are in society amongst us and they feel all alone, and they feel like they're invisible, like they're not really seen, and they can't be themselves. So again, it's something that touches on a huge topic that I'm sure would be pertinent to a number of people.